I'm Dr Kelley. I'm the Managing Director of the R.D Fund. And the R.D Fund is the venture arm of the Foundation Fighting Blindness. I was motivated by their mission because they're a disease-focused foundation. And I think given the founder, Gordon Gunn, who is blind, has been blind since his 20s, if you were to meet Gordon, you would know why immediately. He's an amazing person. He's very successful and he is very generous with his money. He's donated quite a bit to the foundation and the R.D Fund. But it's really the tactics they're using to approach disease via the Foundation Fighting Blindness and the R.D Fund. They have the full suite of activities. They have built an organization that has the full continuum from basic science research, funding basic science, clinical science, individual investigators, basic and clinicians, and they have their translational programs that fund work that's approaching the clinic. The R.D Fund is there as a vehicle to select technologies that its board of directors believes is investable. We've evolved organically over 50 years, 52 in fact. And I think because we're long-standing and with the support and involvement of Gordon Gunn and many other luminary families that are affected, we're really driven by the donor. So we refer to it as a donor-led organization. We're donor-facing. I think that doesn't distinguish us from any other diseased organization, but our donors are heavily involved at every level. It's a very large organization with a very large community of donors, affected donors. I think there's lots of questions about, well, when are we going to address their disease? We do grant quite a bit, approximately 25-30 million a year, but that's under a different paradigm. There's no expected return on investment. There's a little bit, but it's not enough to further the foundation's mission. Alternate sources of capital are required to do that. The R.D Fund has the dual promise of clinical return and financial return. It's the science that brings forward a candidate product that is validated by a non-clinical model first. We don't have that for all of the inherited retinal diseases in our space. So it's an opportunistic way of looking at how we approach disease, what is ready today, and then what can we do to build new models, animal models included, where we've just created the world's first genetic non-human primate. So we're thinking ahead. As Gordon would say, a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what the foundation aims to achieve, is to make everything more accessible, make everything, it's an economies of scale. It's let's establish several approvals. You mentioned pricing earlier, and hopefully as the tide rises, these smaller indications are going to benefit from the successes of these larger indications, and we can address most of our community, if not all. The foundation, I would argue, is well equipped to measure risk because you have the experts. I've always said you have to ask the right questions. You have to find the right people to ask the right questions. Well, we have the brain trust of the organization consists of over 60 scientific advisory board members who are always willing to help on the venture side as well. And then you have the executive committees of the Scientific Advisory Board who are all talented researchers, clinicians. And then you have the board of directors of the foundation, and the R.D Fund has a separate board of directors. It's a separate, wholly owned subsidiary of the foundation. So you can see that we have multiple groups of people that we rely on, and depending on the opportunity that we're evaluating, if it's dry AMD versus an inherited retinal disease, we can go and select the appropriate expertise to evaluate that technology. It's an enormous advantage that we bring to a syndicate are the people. Absolutely, it goes both ways. We have venture capital firms who bring us opportunities or have the luxury of having the first go at an opportunity because they have deeper pockets. It might be a promising researcher in Switzerland. We're not in Switzerland, but they're surrounded by European investors. Well, those European investors, even though it's on a different continent, are tied to the foundation one way or another, and they would want our validation. So we're participating in those discussions, those syndicate discussions, when other VC firms are not, because the capital is somewhat limited in an early stage investment. Usually we have a lead investor who's very sophisticated, and it could be a strategic. But generally speaking, you have, whether it's Europe or the US, there's different philosophies on how much capital should be distributed and when and that sort of thing. Usually the US spends a little bit more and can sort of carry the torch all the way through pivotal trials. We wouldn't have over 45 top tier investment partners and strategics if we did not behave like them professionally. Not all venture capitalists behave professionally, but we're beholden to the rules of institutional venture capitalists. Unless we lead an investment, we are following someone else's lead. Now we've co-led, we've led in one scenario. It's very difficult to do, especially in a down market. The foundation doesn't lobby. There are lobbying groups that lobby on behalf of topics that are important to the foundation, but it's not the foundation's job to price. It's the company's job to do that. How that reflects on the foundation and participating in those investments is a different question. We're obviously doing this to benefit our community. First of all, successful treatments, preventions, and cures for inherited retinal diseases, but also at an affordable cost. I think the field, as we discussed earlier, you will see as the tide rises, you will see price go down. Now, there is discussion about the ultra rares. If we are to develop an ultra rare that has 50 patients in the US and it costs $50 million to get through the clinics, how do you price that therapy? So I think in some cases we may have to raise the price. The price has already been established by Luxturna in the US for gene therapy at least. But I think the price is going to fluctuate to some degree depending on the size effect. What is the quality of life before and after treatment? What are the total cost per patient? What is the benefit per patient? These are the sort of issues that we're going to have to iron out. We have one approval in our space. Well, we have one family that has generously donated to the R.D Fund, and at one point created a foundation, but realized that the Foundation Fighting Blindness was better equipped to execute with those dollars. Company was created with top-rate, beautiful investigator at University of Pennsylvania. A gene therapy program was started from scratch. An animal model was built. It emulated human disease, treated the animals successfully in the non-clinical studies, and then we carried that forward into the clinics. And a very dear friend of ours' child has been subsequently treated successfully. He can see much better than he could before. It's emotional. It's emotional for the whole organization.